Netflix shows us a monster, but who was this man really, and what was hidden behind that image? Ed Gein, the monster they created. One mother, one town, one house. Plainfield, Wisconsin, a small town that, until the late 1950s, lived so quietly that hardly anyone knew about it, even in neighboring counties. One main store, one school hangout, one bar, one circle of neighbors who know each other's names, cars, and habits. And there was one man who always seemed weird but harmless, awkward, quiet, a tight smile, eyes down. Everyone knew Ed Gein, and no one understood how dangerous he really was. To understand how this man became one of the darkest symbols in American crime history, we have to go back to the place where he never had a real chance to grow up normal. Childhood and the mother, the foundation of his mind, a world split into sin and mother. Edward Theodore Gein was born August 27, 1906, in La Crosse, Wisconsin. His father was a drinker, weak, a failure. His mother, Augusta, was a religious fanatic with a steel grip. In her worldview, things were simple: us and sin. Alcohol is sin, sex is sin, women, almost all except her, are sin. The city is a nest of depravity. The husband is almost useless. The sons must obey her and only her. Instead of a normal childhood, endless sermons, Bible quotes ripped from context, stories of punishment for uncleanness. Augusta isolates the family, moves them to a farm near Plainfield, away from the corrupted world. There Ed learns two things. The outside world is dangerous. His mother is the only source of truth. He grows up quiet, dependent, socially clumsy, deeply attached to his mother. At school they make fun of him, but he doesn't fight, doesn't shout back. He just goes further into himself. His older brother Henry sometimes openly criticizes their mother. That becomes a crucial crack inside the family. Loneliness on the farm. In 1940, his father dies. For Ed, little changes. He hadn't been holding on to him anyway. In 1944, something happens that still raises questions. A brush fire near the farm. Ed and Henry go out to control the flames. Later, Ed reports that he lost his brother and leads police to the body. Henry is lying on the ground, burn marks nearby, but there are injuries on his head. The official ruling, accidental death. The unofficial question that still appears in books and investigations. Did Ed really just find his brother? There is no proven murder, no charges were filed. In 1945, his mother dies. For most people, that's a tragedy. For someone who made her the center of his entire reality, it's a catastrophe. His world collapses. No support, no skills to live among people, no real social connections. The farm becomes a frozen mausoleum of the past. His mother's rooms are boarded up, sealed like a private shrine. Ed moves into a filthy kitchen and one or two tiny cluttered rooms drowning in trash. The rest of the house is a sacred memory zone of his mother, to whom he is pathologically attached. He works odd jobs, helps neighbors, sometimes watches their kids, seems quiet, harmless. People call him strange, but many let him into their homes. Plainfield is relaxed. No one here is expecting a monster. The disappearances of Hogan and Worden, a timeline of missed signals, disappearances that at the time looked like strange coincidences. In 1954, bar owner Mary Hogan goes missing. A woman with a sharp personality, loud voice, and a reputation the town's moralists didn't like. In the bar, they find blood, spent cartridges, but no body. Police suspect an attack, maybe a kidnapping, but there's little solid evidence. In a small circle, Ed, according to witnesses, sometimes jokes, "She's at my place." People take it as awkward humor. No one takes him seriously. No one is ready to see him as a killer. People rarely disappear in Plainfield. When they do, small towns tend to explain it as anything but real horror. November 16th, 1957, the day the silence ended. On November 16th, 1957, Bernice Worden, owner of the local hardware store, disappears. That morning she opens the store. Closer to noon, several witnesses see Ed Gein inside. By evening, her son, the deputy sheriff, comes by and finds an empty cash register, blood traces, an open door. On the sales slip, the last recorded purchase is antifreeze for Ed Gein. For a small town, this is no longer odd. This is a direct signal. Police go to the Gein farm. What they find there becomes one of the most shocking discoveries in 20th century American crime history. Fact: inside the house they find the body of Bernice Worden and multiple remains from other individuals, items made from those remains. Later it's established that some belonged to women whose graves had been disturbed in local cemeteries. The exact details are well documented in files and books. In an ethical format, we don't list them and don't dwell on them. Ed Gein is arrested that same day. Plainfield wakes up in a new reality. The quiet, awkward neighbor turns out to be a man who lived among the dead for years, building his own world out of them, confessions and officially established offenses. In interrogation, Ed Gein starts talking. He stumbles, forgets, adds strange, fragmented details. He claims that after his mother's death, he went to cemeteries, opened fresh graves, took body parts, talks about attempts to recreate his mother's image, about women's skin, about wanting to try it on. Part of what he says matches the evidence found in the house. Part sounds delusional, but it's delusion backed by physical proof documented by investigators. In parallel, his connection to the disappearance of Mary Hogan surfaces. In 1957, he is declared mentally unfit and sent to a secure psychiatric institution instead of going through a standard jury trial. Later, in 1968, when his condition is reviewed, the court holds a hearing on the murder of Bernice Worden. Gein is found guilty of her murder, but not guilty by reason of insanity. Legally, he is convicted for the murder of Bernice Worden. The murder of Mary Hogan is treated as established based on his confessions and corroborating evidence, although there was no separate full trial on that count. Plus, multiple episodes of grave desecration. The final decision: lifetime confinement in a psychiatric facility. Psychiatry, lifetime confinement. One of the core mistakes of pop culture is turning Gein into a supervillain. In reality, he is not a charismatic manipulator like Bundy. He is a clinically ill, socially isolated man with severe mental disorders, a traumatic upbringing, and a pathological dependence on his mother. Psychiatrists record severe psychosis, delusional thinking, distorted perception of death and the body, a fused image of mother, woman, guilt, and punishment. Gein is not a romanticized cult killer. He is someone the system, society, and even his own family failed to see in time, until his house became physical proof of his madness. That is not an excuse. It is a diagnosis and a warning. When society brushes off clearly unstable people as just odd, sometimes it misses real danger. After being found insane, he spends the rest of his life in secure institutions. No escapes, no big media tours, no show. Everything stays quiet. He dies on July 26, 1984, at Mendota Mental Health Institute from complications of cancer and respiratory failure. His grave remains unmarked after repeated vandalism. The story seems finished, but in mass culture, it's only beginning. Movies, myths, a constructed legend. Gein's crimes become a template for some of the most famous horror characters of the 20th century. Norman Bates in Psycho, Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs. Not direct copies, borrowed elements. The house, the mother, the skin, the isolation, the lonely farm. Every time parts of Gein's story are taken, amplified, stylized for the screen. And here lies the danger. The public starts to remember the myth instead of the record. People think cannibal maniac, dozens of victims, while the legally confirmed murder count is 2, plus exhumations and the abuse of bodies. The myth grows. Reality gets erased. Why the Gein case still matters. Ed Gein's story is not just raw material for horror. It's a case about dangerous isolation. When a family cuts itself off from the world, any distortion can grow inside. No witnesses, no correction, no outside help. The taboo around mental health. A man who clearly needed help was seen as weird but fine. No early intervention, no real interest, law enforcement and the legal system. From early investigative mistakes, including methods that later led to parts of his statements being thrown out, to the decision to confine him in a hospital rather than execute him, the case shows how the law tries to function even in the most disturbing situations. A culture that prefers monsters over causes. While films and series replicate the terrifying image, people forget the real victims, the real scale, the real context. The Gein case forces us to separate fact from horror marketing and to ask why that difference still matters in 2025.